Just give it a few seconds. Okay, I think we should be good to go.
Okay, I think we're live. So hey everyone, welcome to the second edition of the bi-weekly foam community call. This is, as I just said, the second time we do the bi-weekly one. We today have a guest, and I'm really excited for this one. Previous time we talked about dynamic proof of location, and Ilya and Ryan showcased some of our recent development, including hardware development and the next steps for dynamic proof of location. Today we're going to talk about the foam map, which is the second major token curated registry on mainnet. It's also a really exciting experiment in coordination around OpenStreetMaps. We are currently with 6,748 verified points of interest, without doubt the largest token curated registry on mainnet. And we're going to go through in three different ways. Kind of the foam map. Brian is going to talk about three specific points that kind of have stood out in this time. Martin is going to talk about new features and showcase some of those. And Caleb from Blocklytics is going to talk about some analytics on the map and what can be learned from the data that has been aggregated so far. Also, I want to point out that there is a way to sign up for all of these community calls via a Google Calendar link, so they automatically show up in your calendar. I think Daryl can share that in the chat for this call. But without further ado, I'll give it over to Brian, who works in the marketing team, and he's going to walk through some of these special points that we found especially interesting so far.
Awesome, thanks, Arthur. So I don't think I've had a full-on segment on the community call yet. So for everyone who seeing me for the first time, hello, I'm Brian. I work on marketing at Foam, and as part of my job, I spend a lot of time looking at the Foam app. All those POI tweets that you see on our Twitter come from me, for the most part, browsing the Foam app and looking for interesting trends and interesting POIs. And today I want to talk about three POIs that we all think challenge the TCR model in a really interesting way. So if anyone has spent time browsing the Foam app, you know that quite a few of the points represent places that are fairly easy to kind of assign a certain objectivity to. There are coffee shops that you see down the block, there's stadiums, there's museums, things like that that are fairly rooted in their place. There are also some points that I think are a little bit more complicated than that, and you know, we call our model objective TCR. And today I wanted to talk about 3 points that kind of are inherently subjective, and just kind of an interesting experiment that happens when an objective TCR handles fairly subjective, political, complicated points. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you guys the Foam map, and we can go from there. Okay, so this first point, it sits in the Sea of Japan, and it has many names, which you'll see for a second. The Japanese name for this string of islands is Takashima, and there's also names for the individual islands, and then there's also a Korean name for it, and there's also a Franco-English name for it. But basically, there are these kind of string of islands that sit directly in the middle of Japan and Korea, and there's a very complicated history between Japan and Korea's claim over the islands as being sovereign to each of the different countries, and I won't go into that for all your sakes, but the long story short is that it's a very complicated political scenario that has not been really resolved as of late, and so we can ask ourselves, what happens when an objective TCR goes to deal with this kinds of issue? And so we could see here, let me take a step back and say, if you're ever browsing the Foam map, your default view is to have the pending, challenged, and verified points on, and by default, the rejected points will be off, just because we don't want to I guess, cloud your vision with points that are inaccurate. But you can go on and turn this on at any time. And so for a lot of the points here, it'll be helpful if you have the rejected filter on. So that's, if you see these red dots and you haven't seen them before, that's what we're looking at. But basically, if we look at this, the POIs that are on the string of islands, you can start to see like just how controversial the claim, the political claim is from the Korean and Japanese perspective, and also from this weird like Anglo-French centric perspective as well. So all the different names here. So we have the Dokgo Lighthouse, which is an actual like physical feature on this one island here to the south. We have the Takashima, which is like the name of the general islands. The Liancourt Rocks is that Franco-English name. And then we have someone who submitted a bunch of different points under different naming conventions that was like incredibly persistent about trying to get, I guess, the Japanese perspective through. And might be helpful to actually go and read one of the descriptions for one of these points that was rejected. So the person who submitted the official name of this island is Takashima, which is a very bold, straightforward statement. This island is historical, geographical, and territory of Japan. Also on international law, after the war, Korea has been illegally occupied by force and has reached present. Korea has no legal basis. They replace the bamboo island around Ulegudo, I can't pronounce that right, and claim ownership of Takashima. Okay, so that's kind of one side of the story. We could look at the lighthouse to kind of get different side of the story slightly. And then we also can look at this Liancourt Rocks point to get another side of the story. And so this point you see actually was accepted. So it says, source of proud nationalisms, the Liancourt Rocks, also known as Takashima or Bamboo Island in Japanese, or Dokdo or Tokto, Korean, are a group of small islets in the Sea of Japan. While South Korea controls the islets, its sovereignty over them is contested by Japan. South Korea classifies the islets as Dokdori, Uleng Up, Uleng County, North Gyeongsang Province. Japan classifies them as so on and so forth. But finally, this person says, let's keep it friendly here, guys. So it's, I don't know, I just think it's really interesting to see how, you know, the FOMAC PCR, in a way, I know a lot of the points that you see, you come across, are fairly like straightforward. And yes, that coffee shop that you see in the corner like is of course there, and that's not very controversial. But we have to come and remind ourselves that the TCR model is very like experimental thing still, and it's just really interesting to see how different people kind of vie for different positions, political positions, very political positions on the map. And if there's anything I think we're trying to say with this point, and the next two I'll show you, it's that there isn't really a clear answer here. There's no obvious solution for how a TCR might force objectivity on what are inherently subjective points. But I think it's really important when we consider this TCR in the full map as one of the first public live TCR models that we point these things out and kind of take notes on them, make observations, and help to improve the model from there. So with that being said, I wanted to go to the next point, which is slightly different form of political controversies. So I'm trying to scroll in right now. So this point, some of you might have seen this if you're members of our forum, but it's called the Zanzi Cannabis Club, and the controversy basically extends from the fact that in Spain, cannabis clubs are legal, but they have to be like truly private. You can't advertise them, and you certainly can't display them on some kind of public map like that. In a way, is a form of advertising. So when this POI was registered, someone pretty immediately challenged it, and the reason for challenging it, which is listed here in the forum, is basically what I just said. This POI is illegal under Spanish law. Cannabis clubs in Spain are legal only if they are private and they don't advertise or offer membership. And this POI does both by linking back to the website. And So, I'll let you guys all on your own time go to our forum, and maybe Daryl, you could post a link to this into the live stream chat. But people had very compelling reasons for why this POI should be allowed, why it shouldn't be allowed, and I think both sides presented really interesting arguments. In the end, it just so happens that the point was rejected. And like the Lean Court Islands, I think the point here is not that we're providing some kind of top-down precedent for how things that are illegal according to national law and potentially allowable based on provincial law or Barcelona or Catalonia law. It's more so that this was an outlet for people to go and vote and lay their opinion down in the TCR model. And it just happens that in this instance, it was challenged. And we hope that more of these points come up. And so, we'll go through the same kind of voting and iteration process, and slowly but surely an actual consensus will be formed around, or I guess some kind of precedent will be formed around, from the community's perspective, around how these things are established. And for us, a big part of that is our forum and allowing people to go and lay their arguments out in the open and to have that kind of active discourse around what the FOMAP should look like. So that's another interesting point for those reasons. And then finally, we have this somewhat more humorous point in New York. So for those of you who live in New York or have been to New York, know that there is a pretty prominent Tompkins Square Park. And so this POI was registered on the map as Schmopkins Park. And the reference, which is probably pretty beyond me, comes from this YouTube video. It's a song, it's electronic music, dance music song. And midway through the song, there's some kind of reference to, I guess, a fictional or real world Schmopkins Square Park. And so originally someone registered this point, and it was accepted, even though it's pretty obviously not a real place, or even then it's technically false, because the real Tompkins Square Park, right, is spelled differently. So it's an inaccurate POI, and inaccurate POIs for the most part, which I think Kayla will actually show you some interesting analytics around, are pretty successfully and pretty commonly challenged and rejected on the FOMAP. This one, I think, for its mimetic qualities was accepted, and I think it was live for a few weeks until someone else challenged it again, and then that second time it was rejected. And I think the point here is that this is like the FOMAP and FOMAP community being undecided whether or not we think that the jokes should have precedence to objectivity and how points are reflected in the real world. So once again, there's no clear answer here in terms of whether or not memes should be allowed in the FOMAP. Instead, the point is more so that there is a capacity for this kind of discussion and this kind of interesting experimentation simply to take place. And so, those are the three POIs that I wanted to share. If people have any others that kind of fit this description, I would love to see what they are. There's 6,000 something points in the FOMAP now, so certainly some of them fly past even my radar. So post them on the forum, post them in the chat. We'll find them, and we'd love to kind of have a more active discussion around figuring out how these points fit into the TCR system. So with that, I will give it back to Arthur, who will move us along.
Thanks, Brian. I think, as Brian said, send us over some more examples of POIs that fall out of the normal spectrum. These are really interesting case studies for us and help us improve what we're building. Which an unintentional segue into next step of what we're building on the FOMAP. Martin, our senior blockchain engineer, is working on the next steps of the FOMAP and is going to showcase and show us some of that. Martin, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So, yeah, I'm Martin. I work on the mostly I worked on the foam TCR map and a lot of the open source work that foam does. And I've been recently kind of trying to tie up a lot of the more like popular user demands before we kind of start doing a lot more work in the dynamic proof of location direction. So trying to do some things to the foam map that are that still needed to be done before we considered it to be like a more stable and usable. And one of those things was the sort of email notifications. So Caleb had originally set up these foam digest emails that probably lots of people who are on this call are receiving. And if not, then you should figure out how to do that. But basically the foam digest email is like a global digest of everything that's happening on the map. I didn't actually bring one up, unfortunately, and I don't think I'm going to try and fish one out in my email. I should, but basically it's just a sort of summary for the day of the changes to the map, which include points added, removed, vote outcomes, sort of summary statistics, and that's really great. We don't want to get rid of that, but what we did want to do is to add a notification system that would allow users to sign up for notifications that are that would be relevant to them, meaning that if they don't act on this notification, they have some potential to possibly lose tokens or to have their assets removed or repurposed. So yeah, basically this is going to be, oh yeah, so we just got a link post shared for the digest if you want to look at it for today. So basically I'll just show you these kinds of templates that we've created. These are examples of a few of the templates. What you have if you go to map.foam.space and you look at the map of connect. What you'll see is that a lot of people post points and are super excited about it, but there's not really a great way currently to manage some of the personal aspects of this. Like there's not really a great way to get reminders about things that you're supposed to do. So for example, whoever created these points in New York, it looks like all of these sort of are waiting to be verified. And that's a thing that happens a lot because this is just one of the ways that the application works is that your points don't automatically get changed status from pending or application period to verified. And this happens a lot, that there's just a lot of things out there that nobody has contested, but are not green or not verified because the owner of them or whoever has some motivation to change the status doesn't go back and do this for some reason. And I mean, it costs Ether in order to do this. And so the first solution that I would like to see happen is not that that everybody should be responsible for going through and combing through it, but maybe that only the people who are motivated to do so. So we've made these email templates so that whenever you are signed up for these emails and anything that happens, such as this kind of scenario where your point is waiting to be verified, but nobody has done it yet, you should receive a reminder email notification. So for example, this one is like, whatever, these are just templates, and I don't know if anybody's posting Starbucks or not, but in this case, somebody posted a Starbucks that had passed the application period and was waiting to be updated, and then there will be some links for you to be able to directly, for example, link into this view where you can simply update the status of it. Another thing that happens is that people have points that are either in the pending state or or in the verified state that have been challenged. And so in the first example, yeah, I mean, but all these examples, you could potentially comb through the global digest email and try and figure out what's happening. But the point of this is that you should receive a more direct alert notification. So in this case, in the event that your POI has been challenged, you could find that in the global digest email if you wanted to read the whole thing. But also you should be able to be subscribed to this because it's a potentially bad scenario for you. And you might want to post some more information about this point to defend your position on the forums, or however it is that you want to get the vote out, so to speak. And again, there is always like a sort of way to link back directly into the app from here. Another such one is the sort of summary outcomes results of these challenges. So when the challenge is over, again, the point doesn't, it's probably unlikely the case that this is probably less frequent, but it is also the case that that the point doesn't automatically change from pending to verified. The point doesn't automatically change from challenge to either removed or back into its previous state. So when the challenge is over, somebody has to go to the app to, so to speak, resolve the challenge, even if the outcome of the challenge is already known to everybody who participated because they've been reading information from the blockchain. So in this case, what we wanted to do is just let me just see actually if there are any such pending challenges, but it's usually not. It's not as common because, well, challenges are not as common as other things, but also, yeah, so this is a vote still happening. So, but in any case, it's a similar analogy to the first case where it doesn't automatically happen. So in this case, you would get an email if you had voted in this challenge, or if you are the owner or the initiator of the challenge. So basically anybody who has some kind of skin in the game, so to speak. And you would get a result. You would be able to tell from this just if you were on the winning team. But in any case, if you have some reason that you would like to update the status, primarily because you were the winning voting team, or you had proposed the winning challenge, or the challenge had failed and you want to clear up the reputation of the point, you can do that. Another template which doesn't appear here, I guess because it's finishing up the design, is that a lot of people will commit a vote on a challenge because they see the challenge there, but they may not be just always going back to monitor the timing of everything. So it's very possible that even if you really wanted to go back and reveal your vote, which is the only way that it can be counted in the outcome of the challenge, is the second pass where you come back and reveal the vote that you had committed. It's often the case that you might just forget to do that and just run out of time because there's currently not a really clear way of managing your the challenges which are coming up that you voted on in the app itself. And so one kind of stopgap way we were going to fix that for the moment is that to go ahead and send an email notification to remind you to go back to the app to reveal your vote in the event that you had committed one. And there was recently some updates last week or 2 weeks ago maybe, where we try to kind of abstract away this salt thing a little bit more, assuming that you are using a normal browser with some normal settings. It should be the case that you no longer have to sort of depend on these files where you have stored your voting information. So we think that this reminder email plus this new sort of salt abstraction is going to be a way to make revealing a lot more natural compared to when we first started out. And then the last thing I would say, this is not related to the emails, but it's on the map for probably what's next, is that we're interested in getting some integrations with some decentralized exchanges, so including some widgets in the Foam application themselves, so that it's easier to become member of the or as a participant in an active participant in the foam map if you have, let's say, Ether or some other tokens and you would like to exchange them. Currently, it's not exactly straightforward to acquire foam tokens, even if you have other cryptocurrencies or digital assets. And we would like to make the barrier for acquiring foam tokens easier so that more people can participate. So hopefully in the near future, we will have some more updates about that. These email services should be available starting next week, and we'll make a post when those things are out. So anyway, we hope you like it. And I will stop sharing the screen and go back to Arthur.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, I'm especially excited about the email notifications. It's something we've gotten a lot of requests about, is the necessity to be able to follow the points you've been engaged in. We've been doing that with both the dashboard, but now extending that with the email notifications. So for the next part of the call, we're going to go with the assistance of Caleb. Caleb is going to walk through some of the analytics that they've been doing continuously on the foam map, and it's going to be really interesting to see his opinion on what's going on.
Thanks, Arthur. So thanks for having me on. My name's Caleb, if you don't know me, from the Daily Digest. I send those out every morning. But today, I wanted to take a little bit closer look at challenges on the map. I really find that foam is it's a really interesting experiment from the TCR point of view. There's a lot of activity going on the map, and TCRs in general are trying to curate this accurate data using skin in the game economics. And in foam's case, they're testing these with three types of incentives for their users. And so we're going to look at a little bit closer. So the three user types are cartographers that want to add points that will not be voted off the map, challengers that want to challenge points that will be voted off the map, and voters that want to vote on the winning outcome. So the first diagram I'll show shows what's actually happening on the map. And if you follow the top line, what you can see is out of the about 7,700 points that have been added, 311 were challenged. And of those 311 challenges, 277 of those were successful. So generally speaking, cartographers seem to be doing a good job because only about 4% of their points are challenged. And speaking, challengers are also doing a good job because 94% of their challenges are successful. And what I've also noticed, and what Brian mentioned as well, is that the challengers are pretty fast. So nearly half of all of the challenges are started over points that have been on the map for less than a week. But that said, just having an old point doesn't mean that it's necessarily safe from being challenged. So older points are still being found and challenged. And to me, this long tail indicates that the curation process could probably be even more efficient. So for the next bit that I want to speak about, it's something that's been quite contentious on the forums and the community. And it's a question of if cartographers are incentivized enough. So if cartographers just want to add points that will not be voted off the map, why are they adding points and risking their tokens in the first place? And the way that the tokens were distributed and proof of use makes for an interesting look at this, where we can see where people were adding points that counted towards proof of use, or where they were adding points for other reasons, or maybe personal reasons, or for fun. And the clear rules of proof of use kind of allow us to try to decipher the motivations. and maybe look at if the current incentive structure is working. So I don't know an answer to that, but on one hand, the velocity of points being added to the map has slowed down as people have completed their proof of use. But on the other hand, there's significant activity unrelated to proof of use. And so I think this is one that we'll have to kind of keep watching and seeing how that plays out over time. Let's say that you're a cartographer, right, and you don't want to be challenged. So what should you do? So for this slide, I collected all of the list of reasons from all challenges and tried to categorize them into different categories. So the most common reason is a bad location, right? So for example, a point that is supposed to be marking a bridge is actually placed in the water instead of the bridge, or a point that is supposed to be mapping the Apple Store is instead placed at Starbucks, or whatever the case is. And the next most common was low quality metadata. So things like an incorrect phone number, or a missing website, or maybe a typo in the title, and things like that. So in mapping, definitely double check those locations and spend time to get the metadata right. And probably don't put your point in the Sea of Japan. Thank you guys very much for the time. It's really been great to be on here.
Thank you, Caleb. As always, really nice to see. We've been discussing maybe pushing these as a blog post. So for everyone watching, hopefully we can put together some of these in a blog post during the next weeks. It would be great to share this with a larger community. I also think that these are interesting. These are interesting things to look at for the larger TCR community, as we are, probably the biggest data set for looking at if these kind of theoretical models actually work when put into reality. And with that, we're almost at the end of today's community call. I wanted to, we have two things left. I wanted to talk quickly about our New York event, which is next week, and the associated NFT campaign. I'm going to quickly share my screen. Can everyone see this? And wait. Okay, does everyone see this? Okay, so next week, Tuesday, we have an event in New York at the New Lab together with MakerDAO, Relevant, and LivePeer. It's a New York City blockchain showcase. And after the success with the treasure hunt, we're also doing a small NFT campaign surrounding that. So during February 11th, 12th, and 13th, we have a collaboration with Block Cities again, and anyone who adds a POI within this area with the tag New Lab event, which will appear in the tags of when you create a new POI, will be awarded the New Lab NFT as a small token of gratitude, pun intended. We think we're looking forward to people showing up at the event physically, and for everyone not being able to make it offline, you can still participate in some way online. That was all I wanted to say on that. And next we have user questions, which we can see. Ryan, you're on the call. If you want to answer some of those, or if we want to walk through.
Yeah, I just see a few in the agenda, so I'll answer those, and anyone in the call who wants to add more to the chat, we can address those. I'm not sure if all of them made it to the agenda, but first question, which is a great one, is just how do you add a point to the foam map? So you're going to need to go to map.foam.space. This is the kind of URL where the map is hosted. And you also need to obtain foam tokens if you don't have them. So you can purchase them on an exchange like Poloniex or some other decentralized exchanges such as Radar Relay, IDEX, or Uniswap. We'll soon be adding a 0x instant modal so that you can actually get them within the map. And then there is a guide that you can access via the map interface, or it's at mapguide.foam.space. And this kind of shows you all the steps you need to take to approve tokens to the registry and then add them. And it's fairly straightforward, but you can always reach out to us on our message board or email if you need help. You don't need to register with us, but you do need to have those tokens. The next question is if we will develop a bug bounty program on Gitcoin for engaging the wider community of the repository. So we actually have already started small tests with this on Gitcoin. We have put out multiple bounties in a partnership with the Ethereum Community Fund. Those bounties were sponsored in DAI, and they were mostly around the Foam functional programming stack. So those are the tools like Clickbait, Chantrell, and the PureScript Web3. And so we've had some people, attempt to do those bounties, and that has contributed to improving our work. And we're definitely opening to adding more bounties that more directly impact the actual application. The next question is how to monitor Foam KPIs and network statistics. On a basic level, you can see kind of the activity on Etherscan. We're working on extending our analytics interface for public for this exact reason, make it more simpler. But it's also possible to build your own now that our KPI is released stable. And you can partially get these KPIs through a service like the Foam Daily Digest that Caleb has been providing. And in the near future, within the next few weeks, we'll be launching also a leaderboard that tracks these kind of metrics as well. So we'll be providing more tools for you to do that, but we encourage you also to explore our API and toolset to kind of pull out your own analytics as well. And this year we will not be attending ETH Denver. Our team is quite busy right now developing these features, so we were there last year and hope to make an appearance next year as well. The next question is on what's the work we may be doing with Mobi and Trusted IoT Alliance. So those of you who don't know, Mobi is a mobility blockchain kind of enterprise consortium, and Trusted IoT Alliance is the same, but around IoT. We were founding members of both organizations and continue to be involved through board meetings and kind of directional discussions. But for kind of quarter 1 and 2, we're really focused on heads down working on the dynamic proof of location to get to this kind of more advanced MVP stage. And we see from there really utilizing Mobi and Trusted IoT Alliance as like sandbox environments and partners to actually roll out that technology. And a final just general question, someone's asking, what's the value proposition of Foam if you have to make a hardware investment once we're in this dynamic proof of location phase of the project? And while there would be a kind of investment to have the hardware, you're essentially signing to be a business operator, a service provider. And not only do you need to invest in hardware, but you also need tokens as a kind of work license. You can think like a taxi medallion. But the value proposition is a fully GPS-free location service that can be fraud-proof and reliable for Web3 applications. There are mining rewards for simply operating the protocol. So that's kind of one value proposition that you are incentive to run correctly. But ultimately, the kind of incentive is a discounted cash flow model where you actually can have revenue from the customers you serve in a certain area. So whether those are cars, people, devices, things, if they're speaking to your zone and trying to buy presence claims from you, you have basically a marketplace. So as running a zone, you're eligible to run a business and you have revenue from that. So that's kind of, as a zone operator, you're essentially signing to offer these services and you're able to make revenue off of providing that if you do so correctly.
Okay, I think that's everything for today. Thank you to everyone tuning in. Thank you for Caleb for joining the call. Hopefully see you on soon again. We'd love to have you again with the latest updates on the analytics. We're going to have another community call in 2 weeks. Again, we have the event in New York. Make sure to join the NFT campaign. And yes, see you on our discourse. And see you on the next community call. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the team for joining.
Thanks, everyone, and see you on the next community call in 2 weeks, which will be on dynamic proof of location for updates on that aspect of the project.
Bye, everyone.